Hey everyone, Urban Fish Keeper here. And last weekend I built something which was the 4-foot stand. And I thought this weekend I was originally going to do an inbuilt filter, show you how to do a cheap inbuilt filter in an aquarium. But I thought what I'll do is instead of doing another build this weekend, I would actually go through breeding of a particular fish. So the one that I'm going to talk about today is Gardneri, and it's a killifish. And these are the guys that are in here, and at the moment, I don't think you will clearly be able to see it, but they're busy spawning in the mop at the moment. Now, most people that keep killifish, really there's two types. There's the one that spawns in peat, and then there's the other ones that spawn in the mops. Now, the one that we're talking about today, Gardneri, is the one that spawns in the mops. And if you have a look at this video, you'll see what Gardneri looks like. Now, killifish to me are one of my favorite fish, and fish that I probably bred 20 years ago and really enjoyed breeding them. The nice thing about the killifish is, one is they don't need big aquariums, so they're quite comfortable in the 20 liters. The other thing is you remove the eggs, especially with the spawn, the mop spawners like a Gardneri, which is the one that we're talking about today. You let them spawn in a mop. You remove the eggs out of the mop, you put it in another container, and they hatch out, and then you raise them from there. Now, keeping Gardneri, ideally they want a little bit lower temperatures. So they want temperatures probably no more than about 21, 22 degrees. And they're comfortable in that lower range, that 20 range. But the reality is I can't keep temperatures down in this room down that low unless I ran a chiller. At the moment, this tank is sitting at 28 degrees. But the reality is that they're still breeding, and they're laying eggs on the mop, and they're doing fine. What it probably means is that their lifespan will be probably shortened, but they, in captivity, or when we breed them, they probably don't live more than about 2 years anyway, but then they grow reasonably quickly. So from a temperature point of view, 20, 21 is where they like it. They can even go lower. They don't mind lower at all. But higher temperatures, they seem to do fine as well. Now, when they spawn in the mops, what you do is you take the mop out of the tank, and you remove the eggs off the mop, and you put that in another container. Now, we'll get to spawning now again. Just from a water, they prefer probably a softer pH. So anywhere from about 6 to 7.5. 7 is fine. I try and keep the pH a little bit lower, but I naturally get that in these tanks anyway. So around the 6.8, 6.6 mark. And that's fine for them. They have no problems with that. The eggs take about 2 to 3 weeks to hatch. Once you've moved them into a separate container. Now, the spawning mops, there's various types. You can buy them off eBay, or you can buy them from pet stores and so forth. For me, the reality is it's easier just to make your own mop. It's so much cheaper. A ball of wool costs whatever, $2 or $2.50. And the way that I do it is, and I just put a piece of polystyrene at the top of the mop, and that just allows it to float, and I've got a piece of wool off the top, and I then just drape that over the filter at the back, as I have in these tanks, and it stays in position. Now, what I find with Gardneri is they like to spawn very high up in the mop. And if you have a look at this video footage, you'll see here, this is what the eggs look like, and I hope the camera picked up the egg. And then all I do is I just take the egg off the mop, and I pop it in another container. What I do in that container is either I will have a little bit of peat in that container, just to soften the water, make the water a little bit more acidic, and also prevents any fungus on the eggs. If I don't have any peat available, I will use meth blue, but I'll use a minute amount of meth blue in that water that the eggs are going in, just purely to tint the water slight blue, just to keep the fungus away. I normally put a piece of plant in there as well. I don't have any bubbles or anything running in there, and I just leave it for the 2 to 3 weeks that it takes for the eggs to hatch. And the 2 to 3 weeks is dependent on temperature anyway. So, the warmer it is, the quicker they will hatch. Now, if you want to make your own mops, just quickly, what I do, this is the method I use. I just take a piece of cardboard, just a piece of cardboard that I've from any box, and I put it against the aquarium, and I go, okay, more or less how long do I want it? Yeah, that's about the height that I want the mop to be, because I'm going to make a knot at the top of it as well, and therefore I might lose a little bit. Then all I do is I just take my wool, and it's really straightforward. Grab the wool, and I just start wrapping. Okay, I'm not going to make a big one now, but I just wrap it. Not the sharpest scissors. Okay, so all I've done is, and you just keep wrapping it till you get a nice bundle, a nice thick bundle. The other thing is with the wool, try and use a really, a dark one. It makes it a lot easier to see the eggs under light. So the one that I've got in here that they're spawning in at the moment is a really dark green, and you would have seen that in the video. This is a little bit of a lighter green. I would prefer dark green. What I then do is, I've made a couple of loops. I take one piece and pull it through underneath. Okay, and just tie the top piece. Oh, sorry, we'll just tie that for you. Okay. We'll just pull that for now. Right, tie the top piece and then cut the bottom strands off. Okay, and that's it. All right, and that then creates your mop. And then what I do is I just take a piece of polystyrene. You can take a piece of foam from a pool noodle, which is what I've got on that one, and you just tie the end piece onto the polystyrene, or you just, as I've done here, just make a hole through it and put the polystyrene, just make a knot on the other side so the polystyrene doesn't move off. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Float the mop in the aquarium, and it's quite thick, and what they will do is they'll go in between, as they were doing a couple of minutes ago. They'll go in between and they'll spawn, but they really like spawning at the top. Now, from a flow point of view, shouldn't be a very high flow of water. They don't like fast moving water, so just make sure that you don't go high. You can use a sponge filter in there. I've got the Matlin filters running in there. So from a filtration, you don't want a super strong filtration. Other than that, they're quite straightforward. From a diet point of view, these ones eat dry food, no problem. They do appreciate, obviously, frozen brine shrimp. Occasionally I give them a little bit of bloodworm. I don't, stay away from that. For me, I don't like giving too much bloodworm. I give them as well the freeze-dried blackworms. So they get a bit of a varied diet, and you can see the two there, the male and the female. And they're distinctly different, so it's easy to tell the difference between them. In this tank on the other side, I've got another male in there, and at the moment I'm running a trio, so 2 females and 1 male. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull one of the females out and put it with the other male, and then just pop this mop in there and then pull the eggs out. Right guys, that's Gardneri. That's how to breed them. Really easy to breed, a fun fish to breed if you want to try and breed something different. In Australia we don't have killifish. There's not a huge amount of them around. So if you're able to get hold of some, it's definitely worth breeding them. At the moment they're still carrying a reasonable value. Excuse me. These ones I paid $50 a pair. Now that's ridiculous from a pricing point of view, but the reality is that there just aren't any around at the moment. So, if there's an opportunity to breed them, I would say breed them. There's definitely a bit of a market for them at the moment, so worthwhile trying to get them. I'm not breeding them for financial gain. I'm breeding them because I really enjoy them, and they're something different to breed, and they also suit these 20-litre aquariums really well. Okay, that's it on breeding killifish, in particular Gardneri. Mop spawner, not a peat spawner. I have got some peat up there with some eggs in, and I'll discuss that in another video. Somebody sent me some peat with a couple of eggs in of another killifish, but a peat spawner that also prefers much lower temperatures. So and more sensitive to temperature than Gardneri is. They seem to be fine with the higher temperatures, but we'll discuss that in another video. Next week, I think what I'll do next week is we'll talk about the 4-foot that I've set up. That's now up and running. It's all connected, pumps, everything is running. So I'll run you through that next week. What I've got running there, what did I decide to go with? Did I go with a marine? Did I go with something else? You know, how have I set up the sump and so forth? So we'll do that in next week's video. Other than that, have an awesome weekend further. Have a really good week. Stay safe, look after yourselves. Till the next video, Urban Fish Keeper out.